Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to askNK. So today we're taking a look at a wonderful tool known as ArtEngine. So recently ArtEngine was bought by the guys at Unity, and this is a very interesting thing to take a look at. So ArtEngine can be used for material processing, material generation, material remastering, and also material transfer. So everything that has to do with material and also some heavy form of texture creation, you can actually do all these things in ArtEngine. So with ArtEngine open right here, you can see that the interface is extremely simple and very similar to any material creation program that you've ever used. So first things first, you'll notice that we have a library section, we have a node section, we have the 2D, 3D section, the tools, properties, and also the node panel. So these are respective places that things are kept. So within the nodes, we have adjustments, we have transforms, the color management, material composition, paint, smart mutation, master, and also output. We're going to take a look at a couple of these things and some of them that I think you guys would find essentially useful within your time right in ArtEngine. Of course, if you're opening this tool for the first time, you would notice that there is a 3D rounded cube that is right here. Navigation here is extremely simple, as you only need your mouse to get this one going. And for us to actually get started, once you click with your left mouse, you can orbit around your scene, use your mouse wheel to zoom in and zoom out, and with your right mouse button you can also do that. So if you want to zoom in and zoom out, you can also do that with your right mouse button, and then with your middle mouse button clicked and pressed, you can simply pan around your viewport. So there's also some other cool, nifty things I think you guys need to also know. Within this part, you will also notice we have a small white bulb right here. This has to do with your environment lighting. So if you hold down shift, just like you do in Substance, right click, you can easily rotate your environment light. So you can simply do that from here. If you also want to get a whole lot of updates or make some changes, play with the features for your environment light, you can have access to all of those things from here. So this has to do with the environment light. Here has to do with the exposure, your shadows if you want something like that. This has to do with the camera. This other part has to do with the geometry. So if you want to change this from a chamfered object or a chamfered box to a sphere, a torus, all those beautiful things, you can simply do them right here. Right over here has to do with how your materials get displayed onto the 3D object that exists right here. So with this said, let's actually get right into the meat, potatoes, and beautiful stuff that you can do with ArtEngine. So first things first, like I said earlier, ArtEngine is an AI-powered engine which can help you get some very interesting things out of your materials and also out of the textures that you're bringing in. So things like upraising your textures, things like smart mutation. So in case you have issues like seams with your textures, you can actually bring these things over here and get those things out of the way. We're also going to take a look at how you can proceed to creating your very own first material right here in ArtEngine. So first things before we actually get right into talking about how you can create your stuff, we're going to go over to sharetextures.com where we're going to get a couple of textures that we'll start off with. So I've downloaded a couple of them. The first one is the back, so I'm just going to click, drag all of those materials right over here. So you can see I have all of the material channels from the diffuse all the way to the normal and to the displacement. So how you can get this loaded up is if you simply select this, click and drag, you're going to load all these things as individual objects or individual textures right over here. So for our case, we want to simply carry all of this and load them as one gigantic material. So to get this going, we're going to right click and say create material from this selection, and once we do this, it's going to present us with a dialog box. Within this dialog box is where we specify where individual materials will be placed. So this is relevant to the channels that you want to place stuff. So right now you can see because of the suffix and the prefix that was used, automatically it has found that this is ambient occlusion. It has also known that this is diffuse, but it cannot specify displacement just because ArtEngine doesn't have displacement. So instead of displacement, what we're working with right now is a height map. So I'm just going to click on height map, and we're going to talk about that very soon. And right over here, you also notice that we have normal, which we can definitely switch and click on normal right here, and also change this to roughness. This is reflection, which has to do with specularity for now, and we're going to click on create. So you can bring in as much textures as you want, and for this I think I'm also going to go ahead and bring in another different texture. So the reason why I'm bringing these two textures is so that you guys can see what you can do with it. So you notice that this set of textures that I'm bringing in, for us to create a material, we can also also do exactly the same thing. Right click, create material, and automatically, because of how the naming convention was done, ArtEngine has gone ahead to identify all of this stuff. So you can choose to change the name if this is what you want to do, but for our use case, we're just simply going to go ahead and click on create. So now we have the first one, which is the 1K tile, and then we have the 2K back. I can go ahead and click drag and drop right here, click drag and drop right over here, and we have this beautiful things going. So how you also work with materials and how you get these materials to be displayed on your viewport is also very, very interesting. So once you select an object, you're supposed to see it within the 2D view. So how you actually get this one going is you can right click, click and drag, right click, click and drag, and also get this happening directly within the 3D viewport. So if you want to also inspect this with lights, you can get into it, get around there, and also see some very beautiful stuff happening. So with this said, let's talk about some very few stuff that you have to know. So first things first, within the adjustment, there's a whole list of things that you can adjust. You can adjust the hue, saturation, and all that stuff. But for you to be able to adjust one particular parameter or one particular, channel that has to do with the material that you're working on, then you need to go over to the material section and you actually need to split the material. So I can simply click right here and I can split this material, and then I can proceed, go over to this part, select the hue and saturation, and then I can change the hue. So I'm going to also update this right here, or you can simply click right over here that has to do with the execute button, and then you can execute. Right now we've not done anything to the hue, so if we start making those changes, you will definitely start seeing some updates right over here. So for that, I'm going to go to the hue section and I can start changing the hue, and with this done, you'll start noticing that we're having some very interesting feature, or some very interesting updates right here. You can also proceed to using things like levels, which you can actually drag all the way out, and also change the level of individual channels. And once you're done with this, you can proceed to actually regroup all of this together and make some material generation out of this. So right now I can come back and say I want to composite all these materials together, connect normal to where normal is, connect the specular, connect the height. Let's say we want to have the height happening directly there. We can also connect the specular over to the section and also choose to connect the ambient over to the ambient occlusion. So once we get this going, we can right click, drag and drop, and then we can start making our own material. So once you're done or you made these changes for your material, you can actually proceed to export this out and get some very interesting stuff happening for you. So because this is node based, you can actually change and make some very informed changes and proceed with these things. So I can also select all of this as it is and choose to put this in a frame. So with this frame right here, I have one thing done, and I can simply have a very neat looking graph for whatever I want to do. So if you have issues with the snapping, you can come right over here and turn off the snapping so you can easily, move these things around. With this done, let's talk about some other cool stuff. All right, so if you want to search for stuff, you can still go ahead and press the space bar, and let's say we're trying to get some color. So I can also choose color transfer. For example, I can choose to transfer colors across these two materials. So if I click from this node and try to connect it right here, it is not happening. The reason why this is not happening is very simple. We cannot transfer an entire color information from a material. We need to transfer from an independent channel to another. So this is also going to make us to bring out a different split. So I'm going to type the word split and get a split material right over here. So once I get this out of the way, I can connect this, and because we're working with a node based object, it simply means I can get the diffuse from here, click and drag and connect this as the source, and I can also click and drag and connect this as the target. So once I do this, right click, click and drag right over here, right click, click and drag right over here, you can now start seeing that we'll have some very interesting stuff going around here. So you can take a look at this, and from this part you can see the source object which we have right here, and you can now see the target. For some reason this is supposed to happen inversely, but this happens this way. So you can choose to switch any of these particular materials or any of these particular colors that you get to find here, as what this tool will do is it's going to go ahead and look for individual shades and actually list them out here. So you can choose to transfer maybe 1, 2, 3 depending on what you want to do, and you can also proceed to mix these things up and get some very interesting stuff happening for you. If you want to tile these and you want to see what they look like when tiled, click right over here and you can see what they look like when tiled. And because we've actually started talking about the tiling stuff, let's proceed to talk about how you can get seamless stuff. But before we actually talk about the seamless things, let's also talk about the color match. So this is how you can transfer data of colors from one, which is this, over to this other one right here. So if you also want to transfer or you want to match color, you can also choose to match color. So let's say, for example, I click right over here as the bitmap information that I want, and then use this as the target information that I want. So I'm just going to simply move this over and click, right click and drag, click, right click and drag. You can also take a look at this, and I can change from the opacity slider right over here. Let's actually go ahead and process this particular one so you can see. So right now, by simply hitting on process, we've processed this particular color match, which you can see right now. So we're taking a look at this diffuse, which is the bitmap, and we're taking the color that is coming out from the 2K back as the target color that the diffuse from the tiles should take a look at. All right, so let's take a look at how you can actually remove seam. So for you to be able to remove seam, you need to go over to the section that has to do with smart mutation. So from the smart mutation section, you'll be able to do some sort of content aware fill, you know, some mutations, some structural mutation, and also removal of seam. So seam is definitely something that you would definitely find across while you're working with materials and textures. But a good thing right now, we have a texture that actually has no seam attached to it. But then we're still going to use these as an example so that anyone that wants to get these things going can literally see how they can work with this. So I'm going to also right click just to load this up from here, and you can see that we have these tiny nodes around. So this is definitely what is going to help us to actually cut right into the object so that we can select a certain portion and use just that particular portion as the parts which we want to tell the AI to use to generate the relevant seams that we want. Yeah, and I know a lot of people would be like, this is definitely going to get you something very decent just because you have this thing locked, but then you can still choose to set this to a different value. So let's find some very inconsistent value like 13, for example, and then maybe we can set this one to 1. So when we set something like this, of course, you can now start seeing that this is not squared by any form, shape, or size. Then with this, we can just simply set this and proceed to press the execute button. So once we press on the execute button, depending on the GPU that you have, this is definitely going to get your job done faster. So one thing to note is the AI behind ArtEngine works with the GPU, and I think they support from 960, GTX 960 all the way up. And it's a very good thing that we have the RTX 5000 from NVIDIA, and this is getting us something really quick as fast as we can. So if you have maybe an high-end graphic card, of course, you're going to get some very good results very fast. So with this done, you can now start noticing that we have something right here. Over here, you would notice it's set to output, and if we simply select this, we can switch this to input just to see what we added or what we have previously, and then this is what we have now. Let's go ahead and cross-check to see if we have our seams working. So once we come over to our tiling section and simply click tile texture in viewport, you can see that we have a very clean tile happening. And of course, there is just a whole lot of things that you can do with this part, and you can also go over to the composition section, find a couple of things, start making some very informed decisions, and start getting some cool stuff happening for you. So for us to start creating our own material, what we need to do is we can start up with a gradient. So for the gradient, I'm just simply going to bring this to very close, and then proceed to change this to something like radial, for example. Let's load this up and take a look at what we have. Oh, beautiful. So let's take a look at what it is as an individual object. Press F just to zoom right in, and I'm just going to proceed to make this something like that. If I don't like it the way it is along the line, I can proceed to use the invert node, which we can simply plug over to this part. So I can plug in the invert node, and then we can choose to invert this. So totally depend on what you want to get. I'm just going to keep this one. Maybe we'll find it useful later down the line. So next thing I need to do, I'm just also going to do a simple copy and paste, just to copy and paste this. And now let's find something interesting. Maybe we can do linear, or maybe we can do angle, maybe something like that. Or we can actually go for something more diamond-like. All right, so we can do a simple diamond-shaped object like this, and I don't really want it to be close to the edge, so I'm just going to simply slide this across just to get this happening right over here. So now that we have the angle, we can now go ahead and play with things. We can start off by simply adding the free transform, then we need to blend this, or we can just simply blend this right now. So I can go ahead and add a blend just to blend these two objects together. So the first things I would want to do is to make this the background and then make this the foreground. And once I make this background and foreground, you see we have this. So with this there, because we already know that once you're playing with black and white information, black simply means invisible, white means visible. So we're going to use this and create a mask. So once we choose to load this right up, we can also simply use this and actually dial this a little bit lower. All right, so let's load this a little bit lower and then load this directly here. So right here, I'm just going to simply show you guys a very quick texture or quick material that we've created. So from here, what we did was use a simple gradient, and once you click over here, you can see the gradient right here, which is actually this. So if I go ahead and load this up, you can see a very simple gradient. Then we went ahead and created another gradient that is a diamond one. So from this part, you can now notice we have these two gradients, and we went ahead and blended these two objects together. So you can make multiple stuff and actually choose to blend them. For example, I can actually come over here and get like a solid color, and blending is just one way you kind of merge things together while working with any 3D app or maybe any texturing app that actually requires you to do something like that. So I can also switch over. Let's go ahead and select the color like that, and then I can also choose to get maybe a gradient which we're definitely going to work with. So if I have a gradient like this and choose to use a blend, I can connect this blend, use this as our background image and use this as our foreground image. So once we have something, you know, working like this, we can also choose to grab onto this and use it as the mask for what we want. Right now you can start noticing that we're using the gradient as the mask. Of course, you can use several other things as mask, but the idea here is you can choose to use this gradient feature that is available right now and create some very interesting shapes. So if I simply choose to change this over to something else, let's say I change this over to a reflected object, right now you can now notice that we have this going on. So you can also choose to rotate this if this is something that you find appealing, and you know, you can go from here and start making some other stuff. The blending that you make is not limited to one, as you can blend as much things as possible, and you can also proceed to blending things that has to do with height and so on and so forth. So I can connect this over here, and then I can still choose to use this object as, you know, the mask which I would like to get or simply use to, you know, get something like this happening. I can also choose to use this other one as the mask just to get something interesting like this, you know, going on. So the way you get to work with this tool is just more of how you think about stuff and how you want to get things happening for you within your scene. So just to get back to what we're talking about, the next thing which we did was to use a simple free transform to transform this object all the way to this point. This object is only transformed here, and once you click over to the free transform, you would notice that the free transform simply has a couple of scaling values that we've gone ahead to use. So you can scale this all the way to 6, for example, and, you know, set this to 6 by 6, and you can notice how small the, you know, the circle gets. You can notice that from here. So what we did was to simply turn on the input tiles, and you can see, so the tile input was turned off, and you can see what it looks like. And if you turn this back on, you can see it gets styled. So the same free transform is also what we used around here, because this is node based, so it's very simple for you to simply get certain stuff happening. And we use the same free transform. We had a simple blend, which is exactly this result that you can see right here. White goes to white, becomes invisible. Then we had a different blend altogether, having all of these things together right here. Choose to invert certain parts just to get some black and white information happening, and then we use the final composition to compose this object as it is. So from this part, this is where we started making some very interesting decisions. So if you connect this, or if you simply click drag and drop this right over here, you would notice that we have some very fun stuff happening over, or, you know, right here. And of course you can choose to switch right from here to see some of these maps. So if the maps if there are certain maps you want to see, you can switch from here to just take a look at these maps and, you know, have fun playing with them. You can change all of these maps from here, and from here you would notice that we have some very interesting things going on. Right over here, if you simply zoom right in, you would notice that we have this object popping all the way out. Now, the reason why this is popping out is if you go over to this section that has to do with how your material appears on your viewport, you will notice we have this subdivision set to PN triangle. And of course, we've seen PN triangle before when we're working with marmoset, and it's pretty cool to see that this is a very good subdivision type. So we're using the PN triangle and we increase our tessellation all the way to 100, and then from here you can choose to play with the height. So with this, you can get some very good displacement directly in your viewport. So if you want to get the metalness, you can also proceed to getting the metalness by increasing the values from here. So this is exactly how you can get started with working with this tool. And of course, if you want to start making some very informed decisions, or you want to start making some very cool texturing using this tool, or maybe creating materials using this tool, you can proceed to start making those things with a wonderful tool like the ArtEngine. So if you want to get some mutation happening across your entire mesh, you want to get some color transfer, you want to do some your seam removal, there's a whole lot of things that you can get started with by simply using this tool. And of course, it's pretty cool to see that Unity has proceeded to purchase this software, and hopefully in subsequent time to come, we're going to get a huge update coming over to this tool. So this is definitely about it. For those who would like to export their stuff, you can simply press the spacebar and actually call out for a very simple output node, which you can simply use to output this. And if you also want to offset your node, you can also press the spacebar and put a simple offset right over there. And yes, this is definitely about it. I would like to know what you guys think about this in the comment section. And of course, you can go ahead and play with this tool. If you want to get this tool, you can actually go over to ArtEngine, and within the pricing section, you can actually request for the pricing based on projects that you want to work on. And this is exactly how you get this to work. And hopefully we're going to see more of ArtEngine coming out to life to a huge set of people, and also to a huge community. Yeah, so I would like to know what you guys think about all of these things in the comment section. And of course, if you like this video or you learned something from this, you can go ahead and give it a like, and don't forget to share with a friend. And if you're new here, it's going to be amazing for you to hit the subscribe button and also turn on notifications so that you don't miss the next video or the next update. And until I see you guys again with a tutorial update, Free Friday, Tutorial Tuesday, tips and tricks, things like this. Peace.